Go. All right. Hello again, everybody. My name is Carrie Leatherman, and I'm here with Dianna, Sachs, and Ed Eckel. I'm the natural sciences librarian. Dianna is our health librarian, and Ed is our engineering librarian. Today, we are going to give a workshop called Conducting a Literature Review in Engineering, Health, and Science Disciplines. We are recording today, just to let you know, and having said that, let's go ahead and start with the slides. And we're going to start with the slides. There we go. All right. So the basics. We're going to cover what a literature review actually is. Pretty important when we're doing a workshop on literature reviews. We're going to talk about how you can define the question your literature review is addressing and the scope of your review. Also, we're going to cover where to actually do searching for the literature that you're going to be reviewing. We'll talk a little bit more in depth about how to actually search effectively, some search techniques for finding that literature, how to track your searches or how to keep track of where you've searched, what you found. We're going to talk about how to determine how relevant the materials that you found are to your particular question that you're addressing with the lit review. And we're going to talk about kind of a simple question, but it actually is really quite profound. How to determine when your literature review is finished. When have you completed it? Okay. I also want to point out that at the end of today's presentation, we have a very brief feedback survey for you guys to take. We'll give you the URL for that at the end, but just keep in mind that we really want your guys' feedback. We want to know if these are going well. We want to know if these workshops are meeting your needs. So please consider taking that at the end of the workshop today. Also, thinking about feedback, if you all have questions throughout this presentation, please let us know. You can either use the chat feature within WebEx, this video meeting software. You can also feel free to unmute yourself and just kind of, mention, hey, I've got a question, and we'll try to answer it as we go along. We want to make sure you guys understand what we're talking about and that this is actually helpful. Okay.
Carrie?
Yes.
Do you want to hit the present button on your slides to make them bigger?
Yep, you bet. Here we go. Thank you for reminding me. Okay. All right. Is that good? Can everybody see that all right? Excellent. All right. Let's go on to the next slide. Okay. So what is a literature review? I've got a definition up there, and let me just kind of summarize it. It's both a process and a product. So literature review is something that you do, and it's also something that you wind up with at the end of this process. It's basically searching article databases for the most current and relevant scholarly literature about your research topic. So, and then as a product, the literature review is kind of a written synthesis or an overview of all of the research that has been done about your particular topic that you're doing the lit review on. It's designed to be very comprehensive, and I should say that with our presentation, we're really thinking about literature reviews, especially for people doing master's thesis and doctorate dissertations. This can be applied to people that are, doing honors theses and other, even a lit review for, say, your semester term paper. But in general, we're going to be focusing on how this is really comprehensive, how you're trying to find all of the different ideas, thoughts, all of the research about your given question. The idea is with a lit review, your end product, literature review, you want to be able to have an overview of what is known about your topic. And it's really kind of a basis or a foundation for the research that you're going to be presenting in your thesis or dissertation. And you want to make sure that you've covered all your bases. You don't want your thesis or dissertation to be about something that's already been discovered or a settled idea within your discipline. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide. Oops. There we go. So we talked about this idea of a research question. Generally, your thesis or dissertation is going to have some kind of a question that it's trying to answer. When you're forming this research question, you want to think about a couple of things. You want to think about the sort of methodology you're going to be approaching your research with. You want to think about whether your research is going to be qualitative or quantitative. And depending on your area, you want to think about perhaps the study population. If it's humans that you're studying, are we talking about older adult males? Are we talking about teenage girls? Are we talking about the elderly, the middle-aged people? Define that ahead of time, and it'll help form your research question, help with your research. If you're in the life sciences, perhaps think about what type of organism, what type of species you might be studying. In engineering, think about the materials you'll be working with. Is it an alloy? Is it some type of a chemical? So think about those things and have them firmly in mind when you're forming your research question. It'll help you so much in the long run. Okay. Another thing to think about when forming your research question is think about the scope of it. And by that, we mean how broad of a search will you need? How broad of a topic will you be covering? You want to think about the date range of the materials you're going to be needing. Do you want only research from the last 3 years? Do you want it to be very current? Do you need to be doing a more comprehensive historic search, perhaps something going back 10, 20, even more years, depending on your emphasis of your research? What subject areas are you going to be covering? Always important. What types of topics do you want to include or not include? That, and we'll show you later on how that can get really important about what you can exclude from your search. You also want to think about what type of document types are you actually going to be looking for? What's important for the subject that you're studying? Do you want to focus on scholarly journals? Do you want to broaden that to conference proceedings? Do you need books, monographs, systematic reviews, perhaps in the health sciences, dissertations, theses, reports, patents? It really depends on your topic, but it's important that you keep it firmly in mind when you're doing a lit review. You want to know ahead of time where exactly and what you're going to be searching for. Okay, so having said all that, let's take a minute and think about how to actually start doing this. We have an activity that we're going to be doing, a couple activities throughout this workshop to give you a chance to do some hands-on work with, forming this research question. Later on, actually searching, that sort of thing. So for right now, go ahead and open up the URL that's on the slide right now. I believe Dianna has probably put that URL in the chat. Yep, she's nodding her head. Go ahead and open that. It connects you to a Google document. It should look like a spreadsheet. I'm not going to go ahead and open it up, but if you have any questions, just let us know. What I'd like you guys, actually, what the heck, I will open it up. What I'd like you guys to do is go ahead and fill in the first 3 columns. And let me show you what I'm talking about here. Oh, there we go. All right, so there's the worksheet. What I'd like you guys to do is go ahead and fill in the first 3 right there. Your name, optional, but what your particular research topic is and what the scope is, described in those 2 slides that we showed you. If you're not quite sure yet, feel free to explore. We're not going to hold you to this. Give it a shot, and we'll develop this as we go through the workshop. It'll give you a chance to practice these skills and see what it's like, and questions might pop up and feel free to pose them. Okay, so let me go back to this presentation. We're going to give you guys 2 minutes to go ahead and fill that out. Let's see, I have 11:13 right now. In 2 minutes, we'll go ahead and move ahead and go on with the rest of the workshop. Yeah, Dianna, did you have something?
10:13 actually.
What did I say?
11:13.
Wow, okay. Yeah, time's moving faster than in my world, apparently. Sorry. So 10:13. At quarter after, we'll reconvene and go on with the workshop.
I think we could probably keep moving on with the presentation now.
Okay. Okay.
If you're not finished with the first 3 columns, don't worry about it. We'll be coming back to that, and you can just sort of let that ponder in your brain for a little while.
Yeah.
So now I'm going to start sharing, Carrie.
Yep, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. I'm going to turn this over to Dianna.
Swap sharers.
Swap shares. Okay, you should be good to go.
Can you see my screen now?
I can't tell if that's your screen or mine. Oh, yep, that's your screen. Yep.
All right. This is the weird thing about swapping back and forth between us as different presenters.
Yeah.
Full size again. All right. So one thing I did want to mention, if you joined us a little bit late and would like credit for attending this workshop, please do make sure to post your name, your WMU email in the chat. And if you'd like credit for a particular course, if, for example, your professor is offering extra credit for attendance, make sure to put your course name and your professor's name in there as well. So, now that Carrie has talked with you all about how to define your research question and the scope of the information that you're going to need and how we can define our scope as well as our question, the next step that I will be talking about today is to how to determine where you should even look for the information that you need. Now, most academic and scholarly research, the kind of information that you will need for an academic literature review in the sciences, is available through subscriptions to the journals that publish the research articles. WMU Library subscribes to many different databases that collect these journals together so that you can search across these multiple journals all at once. There are some databases of journal articles that don't require a subscription, but at least right now, the majority of them still do require a subscription. So this means that in order to do a comprehensive literature review, you will need to use these subscription databases rather than rely solely on freely available and open access research articles. And for what it's worth, we do have other workshops happening this semester about how to use those freely available open access resources, but that's another workshop. So if you're interested in learning more about that, we recommend another workshop for that kind of research. Now, there are two kinds of databases, two types of databases. Those that are discipline specific, that focus on a particular academic subject area, and those that are interdisciplinary. And there are advantages to each. And most literature reviews will involve searching a combination of both discipline-specific and interdisciplinary databases. So the advantages of discipline-specific databases is that they concentrate your searching only on journals and the articles in those journals that are relevant to a particular academic discipline. And they usually also involve something that's called deep indexing, which is the database, because it is discipline specific, is structured around very specific terminology that is used in that one particular discipline. So you can get very specific in your searching with using the terminology that is focused in that particular discipline. But there are advantages to interdisciplinary databases as well. Very often when doing a literature review, it's easy to get too focused in only the research in one particular subject area. But if you use an interdisciplinary database, it will allow you to find relevant research that might be happening in a complementary academic area. So for example, if you were researching something in public health and you wanted to look for the public health implications of a particular vaccine among school children, you can, of course, use the medical databases, but you might also want to look in some of the in some of the education databases, because you are looking for the application of this public health phenomenon in a school setting. So by using an interdisciplinary database, you will not only get research from your discipline of public health, but also from related research that's being done in other disciplines, like education in this example. It also allows for serendipity. You can often find new lines of research or new approaches to your topic that you might not have thought about previously. So here are some examples of some of the discipline-specific databases that we have. And in a little while, we will show you how to find lists of the discipline-specific databases, as well as interdisciplinary databases for your area of interest. So just some examples: Engineering Village, obviously based on the name, that's an engineering database. PsycInfo is a psychology database. PubMed, biomedical database. SciFinder Scholar, that's mostly chemistry and biology, I believe. Is that right? Yeah. Okay.
Mostly
now we also
chemistry.
have some interdisciplinary databases. These are, again, some examples of interdisciplinary databases. Now, some of them will appear on the lists that we are going to show you in a moment, like Scopus and the various ProQuest databases. But the library search, which again we'll show you in a moment, is the main search engine for the WMU libraries that allows you to look for research that's been published in academic books, as well as journals, as well as lots of other formats, ranging from DVDs to music scores and streaming video and government reports, all different kinds of things in library search. So that is a good resource for you to search across all of the different library resources. And then, of course, Google Scholar. The three of us here, we are never going to tell you not to use Google and Google Scholar for your research. There's nothing wrong with using Google and Google Scholar for your research. All we are going to ask is that you use it critically and responsibly when doing your research. When you're doing a literature review, remember the goal is to be comprehensive, to make sure that you are catching all of the relevant research, regardless of the format in which that research was made available to you, which means that you will need to search many different places to make sure you're not missing out on something important. So the next thing I'm going to show you is how you can find these different databases, both disciplinary and interdisciplinary. Now, I mentioned that on the WMU Library's main page, there is library search, and that is an interdisciplinary database. But underneath the library search interface, there is a button that says Find Databases. And I'm going to go ahead and open that link right now. Oh, excuse me one moment. I will open the link. There we go. So this is the library's main page, which most of you have probably already seen because you registered for this event. If you click on Find Databases, what you can do from this point is you'll see a list of all 600 databases that WMU Library subscribes to, which is way more than anybody should ever need to use. But you can sort the list, filter the list, by selecting on the pull-down menu that says All Subjects at the top and selecting a subject that you're interested in. So for example, if I select chemistry, this shows us the databases which are most commonly associated with chemistry research. Again, this is not all of the databases, but it is the most commonly used chemistry databases. So what we'd like you to do now is to go back to our activity, to our spreadsheet here, and we'd like you to choose, based on the descriptions on the page, you see the descriptions for each subject area, whichever one you choose, to choose 3 databases that you think might be useful for your research topic. And so again, I'll walk you through how to get to that page one more time. If you go to the library's main webpage, wmsu.edu/library, and then you click on Find Databases, then you click All Subjects and select your subject area from the list. So for example, if I select Health and Medicine, These are the databases most commonly associated with health and medicine. And you can select from that list 3 of the databases that you would use. I will also point out that next to each list of databases, you should see the photograph and contact information of the librarian who is associated with that subject area. So for example, this is me. Under chemistry, we saw Carrie. Under the engineering ones, you'll see Ed. So our contact information is there. And then we also have a number of specialized resource guides listed on the right-hand side underneath our pictures on each page. And again, we encourage you to explore those resources as appropriate for whatever your subject area is or your research topic is. So again, just another minute or two to pop in the names of databases that you would choose to search for your research topic.
And if you've got a question about what area you should be looking under, particularly for the person who's doing social sciences, labor, just ask.
Yep. I'm going to move on now, but again, remember that you are by no means locked into these particular databases. You can change your mind at any time because ultimately, this is your research. Whether we're talking about this hypothetical research that's happening today or your actual research in the future, any research project that you are doing is your project. And if you decide based on what you learn that you would like to approach your research differently, or you'd like to refine your topic, or you'd like to search for in different places, or you'd like to refine the scope of your criteria, it's your choice throughout the process to change that up. Just because you have already started doesn't mean that you can't change your mind later on. That's I mentioned that because it's a very frequent concern that I hear from students of, well, I already wrote my thesis statement, so now I'm stuck. You're not. You can always change your mind. All right, so now that we've identified some of the different places in which we can search for information based on our research topic and the scope, we now need to think about search terms or keywords, or you might even call them hashtags. So excuse me, I seem to have lost my notes. I'm just going to pull those up again so that I can actually see what I said I was going to be talking to you about today. There we go. So it sounds very simple. You just search for what you're looking for. But again, we've been talking a lot about how the purpose of a literature review is to be comprehensive. And that means that you often have to think creatively about what terms you are going to search for in order to be sure that you're not missing something important or some relevant information. So when you think about search terms and keywords, I like to think of them as like hashtags on social media. If you search for a hashtag, but the person who wrote the post has given the post a different hashtag, it's not going to come up in your search. So it's important to figure out what terminology is being used to describe your topic so that when you search for those terms, research for those hashtags, if you will, the results that you get are actually, first of all, they are relevant. And secondly, you're not missing anything that's relevant. Now, one of the simplest ways is to start with information that you already have, what you might call a seed paper or a seed article. And this could be a textbook for your class or an article that you've already found that describes some part of your topic. And just look for the words, look for the terminology that the author is using to describe your topic. Another way that you can find terms that are associated with your topic is to use specialized thesauruses that are focused on your academic discipline. So for example, PubMed, which is again the major database for biomedical research, has what they call mesh terms or medical subject heading terms. These are specific terms that every article in the PubMed database is connected with. So, for example, if you're searching for information on heart attacks, PubMed will apply the medical subject heading of myocardial infarction to those articles, since that's the technical term. And when you're searching for information, you can search for the term heart attack, but you can also search for myocardial infarction, because depending on the terms that the author chose to use when writing their article, whether they chose to say a heart attack or they chose to say myocardial infarction, you'll get the articles from whichever choice that author made if you search for both. But if you only search for one, then you're going to be missing out on the articles where the author used the other term. Another thing to think about are umbrella terms or keywords that describe the broader concept, like cardiology in this example. Or you could use terms that are more specific or related to an aspect of your topic, like cardiomyopathy or atherosclerosis. And you can even just do some basic web searching. Use Google Scholar, use Wikipedia for all we care. There's nothing wrong with that, because the point is to gather a wide list of possible search terms that could describe aspects of your topic, so that when you do apply those search terms, you're not missing out on any important information. And what I think is actually the most important thing is to keep a list. Keep track of what search terms you are using and what terms you're searching for in different databases. It's much easier to feel confident that you're doing a comprehensive literature search if you keep track of what terms you're using in which databases, so that you don't later on think, wait, did I search for that word in that database or in the other one? Frankly, I don't care if you keep that list on the back of a piece of a receipt from your takeout menu, or if you just ask Siri to remember the list of words for you. But keep a list somewhere. I can tell you from hard-learned personal experience, it's a huge time saver if you keep that list. Now, the other thing that I want to just show you an example of is that journal articles and databases will often have a list of author-supplied keywords or subject headings. So here's an example where actually on the front page of the article itself, there are a number of different keywords which the author has selected as primary terms that are relevant or that are highly relevant to this particular article, so that if a person were to search for titanium carbide, for example, this article would be more likely to come up. Now, in some databases, you will see these called keywords. Sometimes you'll see them called subjects or subject headings or major subjects or minor subjects even. But these are all different lists of keywords that are deemed to be in some way important and meaningful aspect of this particular article. So look out for those, because if you say that I'm particularly interested in titanium carbide from this article, you can use that term and search for other articles that also have titanium carbide listed as a keyword. So the next thing we'd like you to do is to go back to our same spreadsheet, and in the search terms column, just brainstorm a few keywords of possible search terms that you might use to describe your topic, that you might use to do research for your topic. Now, again, this can be a huge list. It can be, only 4 or 5, whatever you want, but try to brainstorm different terms that might be useful for your search. And remember, this is a brainstorming exercise. There is no right or wrong answer, because you will not know which search terms are going to be effective until you actually enter them into your search. So there's no way of knowing ahead of time. So just brainstorm. And just take about 2 minutes to do that. And I'm going to stop sharing because Ed is going to start sharing.
We're giving them another couple minutes, right?
Yes, and also for anybody who joined a little bit late, if you are interested in credit for attending this workshop, please make sure to put your name, your WMU email in the chat. And if you would like credit for a particular course, like if your professor is offering course credit for attendance, make sure to put your course name or number and your professor's name in there as well. And also, if you're joining us late, feel free to just jump in the worksheet halfway through. That's totally fine. Looks like we have some answers in there, Ed, if you'd like to keep going.
What's that? I'm sorry.
I think we're ready to move on if you'd like to start sharing.
Yeah, sure. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now. And so pull up the PowerPoint slides. Okay. So next thing, so you've identified some relevant databases. You have brainstormed some beginning keywords to start doing your searching. Now the next step is to actually do the search. And so I want to briefly talk about search techniques once you are in a database. There are three different things I'll briefly talk about. One is Boolean logic, using words like and, or, and not to link your keywords so that you create either very specific searches or very broad searches. Limiting by date. So remember back at the beginning, you were tasked with defining a scope for your project and the scope for the literature that you need to look at. So when you talk to your advisor or your professor, how far back do you want the research to come from? Okay, most databases give you the option of limiting by date. So let me first talk about the and, or, and not. So I'm going to pull up my browser and show you a couple sample databases from the list of databases that we showed you earlier. So what I have on the screen right now is the PsycInfo database for psychology. Most databases will look very similar. So if I go to Engineering Village, okay, it does look rather similar. There's search boxes where your keywords are going to go. So this is Engineering Village, this is PsycInfo. In the first box, I've typed in mindfulness or meditation in PsycInfo, psychology keywords. Because these keywords are basically very similar or synonyms, I'm linking them with the word or. So basically, I'm telling PsycInfo, I want articles that mention the word mindfulness or that mention meditation. They don't have to mention both. They could, but they don't have to. Now, I'm also interested in the effects of mindfulness therapy or meditation on depression. So I put depression in the second box. This term, because it's a different concept, is linked with the word and you will see this kind of drop down in almost every database, and, or, and not. This is called Boolean logic. It's a way of linking ideas. So, and basically says, I want all the articles that mention either of these terms, and I want them to mention depression. If I were to change this to or, then basically it would say I want all the articles that mention mindfulness or meditation, or articles that just talk about depression, okay? Not would basically say I don't want any articles that mention depression out of this first set, okay? In Engineering Village, it's basically the same thing. My keywords go in these boxes. So one thing I'll mention, you might notice, is that I have these keywords or these phrases surrounded with quotation marks. These are multi-word phrases. So things that where you have two or more words together that represent a concept go in quotation marks because you're searching for them as a unit or a conceptual idea. And again, in Engineering Village, I have my and, or, and not drop down, okay? And it basically, I'm telling the database I want either of these two terms. They are sort of similar, synonyms. So I'm linking them with or. And I want the concepts in the second box, self-driving cars or driverless cars. And I want them together. So I want either the terms in the top plus either of the terms in the bottom. Okay, so most databases that you use will have those functionalities built into them. So date limits, so let me go back to those databases really quickly. Okay, PsycInfo, okay, I can limit by date. And same thing with Engineering Village. So in any database that you access, hold on here, try to get to that Engineering Village screen, okay? You'll have somewhere where you can limit your searches by date. Back to the presentation. Now, the next thing, as you search, you want to keep track of the databases where you are searching. You want to keep track of the keywords that you have used in those databases and whether you've linked them with and or not. You also want to keep track of the limits or filters that you used. Have you limited by date? Have you limited by a particular document type? Have you limited your search just to journal articles or just to conference papers? Because as you move forward, if you decide you need to go back and find more articles, you want to know what you've already searched so that you don't have to redo it. Okay. And if you're starting with new keywords, you want to keep track of those new keywords and the searches that you've done with those as well. You could do this in a notebook. You can do it in a Microsoft Word document or some kind of note-taking software. However you do it, keep track of it and keep it with your research materials. As you get references or sources, results from your searches, you're going to want to save those because you're probably not going to be reading them just in the databases. You can often, in many databases, export those results or save them as an Excel file, a CSV file, which is basically just a spreadsheet type file that you can open in any computer, or something called an RIS file, which is specifically used with bibliographic citation software. So there are four major bibliographic citation or reference softwares out there. And you may want to consider, if you're doing a thesis or a dissertation, learning how to use one of these. We train students and faculty at Western to use Mendeley and Zotero, which are two free bibliographic softwares out on the market. PaperPile. If you use Google Docs, PaperPile is designed to work with Google Docs and works great. PaperPile costs $3 or $4 a month. The Cadillac of reference management software is EndNote, this one in the lower right-hand corner. So EndNote costs about $100 for students. So, keep that in mind, but EndNote is really good. But you want to, if you're doing a major project, you may want to use bibliographic software to help you keep track of your references. Also, as you find papers, okay, you can use those papers to help you find more sources and references that you may not have found in the databases themselves. You might start with a famous paper, perhaps a paper that your professor has told you about. You might look at well-known researchers' lab pages to see what papers they've published in that area. Especially as you're searching the databases, you may see certain names pop up. Look at the reference lists of your papers. Okay, so let me pull up an example here on my overhead. Okay, so at the end of your papers that you find, they're going to be reference lists. Those references in those reference lists will often lead you to papers that you did not find otherwise that would probably be relevant to your research. What you can usually do with a reference list in a PDF format is copy the title of the paper and go to the main library page and search for it in library search. So you could usually do an article search for it, paste the title of the paper into library search. I'm going to remove the extra spaces here because I think that messes up the search. and then run the search in library search. And often, if we have full text access to that paper, the reference to that paper should show up in the results. And so here's the paper, okay? And I can download it here. So make sure you look at the reference lists in the paper you find. You will look at who has cited the papers that you find. In other words, who has included the papers you found in their own bibliography. So looking at the reference list is going backwards in time on your topic. Looking at who cited the papers you find is going forward into the future. We have three particular resources that allow you to do this. Scopus database, Web of Science, both show you who cited the papers you find. Sometimes this information will show up in library search, which I just showed you, and often you can use Google Scholar to do the same thing. So now we got about 11 minutes left. I want to give you some practice with trying some searches in a database. So what I'd like you to do is go into one of the databases that you've put in the worksheet and log in. You'll probably be prompted for your Bronco login. Try to find one paper relevant to your topic. I put in here seed paper. That just means a paper that you start with to get your research going. Find a relevant paper and post the title in the worksheet. Try the and, or, and not with your keywords and see if you can access the full text. And if you have questions, please just raise your hand or put the question in the chat and one of us will help you. Okay? So now I'm going to pull down a PowerPoint for a second. And we'll give you about 6 or 7 minutes to do this, okay? Okay. I'm going to go ahead and finish the last slide. So I want to make sure we get this information covered before you have to go. We have to put the survey link up in chat. So, but feel free to keep searching. So one of the big questions when you're doing a literature review, particularly for a dissertation or a master's thesis, is trying to figure out when you're actually done with the whole thing, because you could keep searching forever, right? So these ideas will kind of help you determine when you're actually done. So the first thing is, if you've identified all of the major databases that are relevant to your area, have you searched them all? So how many databases did you search? Did you search all the main ones that cover your research area? As you are searching with your keywords in different databases, you're going to probably start to see some of the same authors and some of the same references over and over again. As you start to see that, you're going to hit what we call the law of diminishing returns, which is that you keep searching and searching, but you're finding fewer and fewer new things that you haven't seen before. So that's an indication that you've probably covered the literature pretty well. There's always new articles being published in an area. So to keep track of the articles that have been published since you last did your search, you've got a couple different choices. You can either go back every month and redo your searches in the databases that you've searched to make sure you haven't missed anything, particularly for those of you who are graduate students, right before you submit your first draft of your dissertation or your draft of your research proposal, just to make sure you haven't missed an important study. Some databases allow you to actually set up citation alerts where you can save the search and have it run periodically and send you the results via email. So, if you need help with this, talk to one of the librarians and we'll give you our names in a second. And we could help you figure out if the database you're using has this opportunity to set up a citation alert. Okay, so now, if you need help, okay, we are here to help you. I'm the engineering librarian, so my name and email address is up there. Dianna is the health sciences librarian, and Carrie is the natural sciences librarian, including psychology and statistics. So if you need help with your research and figuring out databases and finding keywords, please feel free to talk to us, okay? And we will post these slides, so you'll be able to get this information. Let me hurry up.
I'm also putting into chat a link where you can make an appointment for a one-on-one consultation with any of the three of us, or frankly with any of our other colleagues as well in the other areas.
Yes. If you have a chance, please take this really quick survey. It's 5 or 6 questions. And that link has also been posted in chat. And thank you so much for attending today. It was really a pleasure working with you. And Dianna?
Well, I was going to say, I know Carrie has to go and we'll be stopping recording, but Ed and I will be able to stick around for a few minutes if anybody has questions.
Okay, thank you, Dianna. And officially, I am stopping recording now. There you go.